Real Estate Pro Talk is a live radio talk show dedicated to educating its listeners on the entire spectrum of real estate matters. Part of the American dream is owning a home or investment property, or perhaps even becoming a real estate agent yourself. Paul Vanas and his team of real estate professionals have over 250 combined years of experience in the industry. In other words, we can make it happen for you. Why go down the road less traveled when we can put you directly on the real estate superhighway? Whether buying or selling in today's complicated real estate market, or if you just need advice about jumping into the real estate business for a career change, you'll need a decisive edge based on experience. Call Paul Vanas at 401-265-6144 for a free, no-obligation consultation. That's Paul Vanas at 401-265-6144.
Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Paul Vanas and welcome to Real Estate Pro Talk. This is a real estate-oriented program which will cover a variety of topics every Friday afternoon from 3 to 4 p.m. here on WOON Radio. Some of the topics we'll be talking about during our time together will be how to buy and sell a home, how to choose a real estate agent, how to choose a mortgage broker, flipping real estate, staging a home, home inspections, private mortgage financing, and a whole lot more. I've been in the real estate business coming up on 40 years now, of which I own a real estate brokerage company, a real estate school, and a land development company. All of the knowledge that we're going to try to impart on you today is based on the continuing education classes that I teach licensed real estate brokers and agents, along with my personal experience and those of our expert guests. The goal in doing this is so you'll have the information in hand when you meet a seasoned real estate broker. Today, I'm happy to introduce Chris Whitten. Chris is the newly elected president of the Northern Rhode Island Board of Realtors. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
Great. I'm glad you made it up here today. I've been wanting to get a member of the board or someone in an executive position in the board on for a few shows now, because I think there's a lot of folks don't understand what the Realtors organization is all about. They think it's really a sales organization, and it's so much more than that. So I'm glad we had you here today so you can explain that. But before we do, I always ask everyone from a business perspective, how did you get into the real estate business?
So it's everybody has their story, right? Especially with
absolutely.
real estate. So with myself, I always, fresh out of college at Dean College in Franklin, I wanted to get into radio. Ironically, here we are.
Right.
So what I ended up doing back in the day is interning at XLO in Worcester, and I ended up landing myself a morning show job at Cat Country 98.1
Okay.
In Providence back in the day.
And country music?
Country music, yeah. So had a blast doing that. Met many great people, Taylor Swift, all sorts of great stuff. And then,
Taylor Swift sang country?
Yeah,
really?
Believe it or not, her first.
I'm a little beyond that age group, so forgive my ignorance.
That's where she started. Yep,
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So it was great. From there, radio was fun for full time for a while, but I said I want to do something new, and real estate. Back in 2008, which, as you know, is one of the worst markets in the history of America. And I said, I'm going to jump feet first into real estate, which I did. And you know what? I haven't looked back since. I love it. It's the personal touch, the personal relationships you build with clients that last a lifetime.
Absolutely.
You know, you talk into a microphone and it's good to have that connection and communication. But when you're on an intimate basis with your clients, you know their kids' names, their dogs' names, their aunts' names.
You get the
awesome.
direct feedback. You're right there getting the feedback, and you can adjust, based on, and that's true. It's funny. You jumped in basically when I jumped in. I jumped in the early 80s, which was the market was in the tank, and I didn't know any better.
Right, same here, yeah.
I was too dumb to know that was the time to jump in. But it's amazing when you do something during leaner times, how creative you can be,
right,
and the things you have to learn to be to just put food on the table, really.
Right.
And then, of course, when times get better, it seems that everyone forgets all the creative stuff, and then it kind of goes around and around and around. So that's great. So now you've been an agent for now 11 years.
Yep, coming on 12. Yep.
Listing and selling it in real estate, and you got involved with the Realtors Association. Did you hold any positions before you were the Mr. President, or how involved were you prior to?
So you always kind of get your toe wet first, right? It's kind of like when you're at Scarborough Beach or something. You get your toe wet, and you're like, I can see. Maybe I'll put my foot in. And so, what happened with me is the first 6 years was a battle, as you mentioned. It was just grind and working as hard as you could because the market wasn't that great then. So once I started to really catch my groove and get comfortable with the process and everything, I said, all right, I need a little bit more, and I want to give back. So I started to join a committee at the Northern Rhode Island Board, and that was my toe in the water. And then I'm like, I like this. I like the vibe. It's working with other realtors. So then I said, well, maybe, and then I was lucky enough to go as a board of director. And then from there, somebody kind of nudged me in the back and said, hey, why don't you be our corporate secretary? And then at that point, you start climbing the ladder. So last year, I was the president-elect for 2019, and then I just got installed a month or so ago as the president.
Congratulations.
It's all a blur, thank you. But it's great, and I can just tell you, it gives you a glimpse of what goes on behind the scenes, not only for us fellow realtors, but for the general home ownership and for our buyers and sellers and those of you listening right now. The tireless work that goes on behind the scene, local, state, and the national level, boggles my mind still. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and of course you need, just legislatively, you always need someone in there plugging for you because the special interest will take hold, and you need somebody to say, hey, wait a minute, guys, this can happen, and this can happen, and this can happen.
Right.
Congress has a funny way of overlooking things until someone makes them aware of what the ramifications are. I know that from my experience in life anyway.
Yep.
So the mission of the Realtors Association, and specifically the Northern Rhode Island Board of Realtors, which before I get into that, you're over on Mendon Road in
Cumberland.
Right?
Yep.
Right over by the Ciabra
Exactly.
Plaza there.
Just around the corner. Yep.
Okay. So what's their mission? What's the goal of the Realtors Association?
So the formal mission is basically to provide our members with tools and resources to support their success. But I love the line here. We also have clear values, and our values is to be an advocate that is cooperative, community-minded, and ethical. And at the end of the day, that's really what us realtors are all about.
Sure.
We all want to be cooperative. And that's what's funny is it's a strange business for a lot of people that if you're not in it to comprehend, because at the end of the day, technically you're selling Coke, I'm selling Pepsi, somebody else is selling 7-Up, and we're all kind of competitors, but we all come together and cooperate for the greater good and for our clients. At the end of the day, it's the consumers, it's the buyers and the sellers, and for home ownership. So we all work together as a whole to make our business and home ownership strong.
Makes sense. It reminds me of the evolution-revolution cycle. John Nash, remember the movie Beautiful Mind?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
He basically came up with that theory that competition, if we all fight against each other, the market none of us will eat, but if we come together, we can all eat and all serve the market in a certain way. So that's fantastic. Basically, once you run with your mission, where does it go from there? So someone joins the board.
Yep.
Okay. And what are the qualifications of joining the board?
So, I'll take a step back just to kind of put it in perspective, because a lot of people think real estate agent is the same thing as realtor. I'm sure you've talked about this on your show many a times is, you can go out and pass your test and get your license and be a real estate agent. You have to, there's much more ethics and when you become a realtor. So the Realtor Association itself is 1.4 million strong, and it's broken down into 3 sections. At the very top, you have NAR. That's the national level.
Okay.
And then below that, you have your state level. So here in Rhode Island, we have RIAR. It's all acronyms. So RIAR is the blue realtor building you may drive by on 95 in Warwick. That's for the state. And then the state is broken down here in Rhode Island into 5 locals. Okay. So you have Kent, Washington. You have Newport. You have the Greater Providence Board. You have Rickabore, which is appraisers and commercial. And then you have us, Northern Rhode Island Board.
I see.
So when a realtor wants to get in, a real estate agent becomes a realtor, they have to choose a local board here in Rhode Island, hopefully Northern Rhode Island for all we offer. Sure. And then at that point, when they do that, they also become a member of the state and of the national.
Okay, so when you're joining one, you're joining all.
All,
okay.
Exactly.
So someone goes out, they take the pre-license class.
Yep.
They sit for the Rhode Island test. assuming they pass the test.
Yep.
So now they want to get into the business, and at that point they have a choice whether or not to go work for someone who's not a Realtor member.
Correct.
Or go work for a Realtor member.
Yep.
And of course, with the Realtor membership office, you get the whole host of things that come along with it. So it's like one way you don't get any presents, the other way you get all the presents for the same amount.
All the tools, the protection, exactly.
Exactly. And of course, the agents now usually they're being trained to a certain standard.
Yep.
Okay. You mentioned the word ethics.
Right.
Is that a mandatory thing that they have to?
You have the code of ethics training that you have to do every 2 years, and they actually just changed it to bolster the program, so it's going to be every 3 years, but that program is going to be much more involved. So as a realtor, you have mandatory ethics training on the code of ethics, which is just mind-boggling to see how precise and clear it works, and everything in there is to protect home ownership. It really is. Majority of that is protect the general public.
Sure. I mean, and everybody, I know I talk to agents every week in my business because I'm also a Realtor member.
Yep.
And the big fear is that the internet is coming, and someday people will be buying houses without even going to look at them, kind of like one of these like Carvana type places, where you buy the car out of the car vending machine. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. I really don't believe. I still believe you're going to need a professional by your side to help you and guide you. Maybe not the experienced person who bought 10 or 15 houses, but even that person needs guidance to a degree. But the people who only bought 1, 2, 3 houses in their life, which is what most people do, they're always going to need help, and especially not so much help in finding the property. I think that's the easy part.
Right.
I personally
especially
believe.
nowadays.
Yeah, I think finding it's easy. Oh, I saw a house, Chris, on the internet. It's at 123 Smith Street. Let's set up a showing. I think that's just the beginning of the journey. All the hard stuff comes after that, right?
Exactly. And what we say too, because everybody fears, it's like Terminator 2. I don't know if you love Terminator 2, but everybody just envisions, I think, the real estate business going that way, is all these drones and robots, and it may work for the car industry. You can shop for a car and go and say, I want this one, show up, sign, and leave. But with a home, it's much different. Sure. And I always say, I'm pounding my heart right now, is you need heart. You need, as a realtor, we're there as a friend. We have very good friends when we work with our clients. Sure. You need somebody that's going to guide the way and know how to pivot and know how to protect you in the right way and what to look for. You may see a nice home. We see a water stain near a window outside of a gutter that says, it's probably ice dams. Are they reoccurring or not? What's the problem there? Does anybody know out there the difference between a 3-tab shingle and an architectural roof? How long they last? Like, we have this general knowledge, so when we go and see what they think is the perfect home online and they get there in person, and then we explain to them some of our knowledge. Absolutely. It's much different, and I think that we're always going to be at the heart of a transaction, and not only that, but we're the connection to many things. 3 weeks after somebody closes, hey Chris, do you happen to know an electrician? Right. I got a couple of great ones I can recommend.
Very good.
And it's that relationship you need. That a computer, I'm sorry, is just. Right. I'm a tech geek. I promise you I could go on forever on how techie I am, and I love technology. It's never going to replace the heartbeat of a transaction. And
that makes sense. And then, of course, because it's not just an investment. There's investment real estate, obviously, but to 98% of it, it's a home.
Right.
And the home requires a little more than just the math associated with the investment, because we have to live in it. We bring up our kids in it. We go through life in it. And, I love when you walk in the house and you see the bedroom and you open the closet with the marks on the door casing where
for the height.
Little Susie was 5 and then 7 and 10 and then there's never one when she's 22.
No.
But that's a cool thing because that meant something to someone at one time, and of course there was an agent associated with that transaction way back when. So at the realtor level, or should I say at the board level, you have you're the president. You have people underneath you. And I'm sure there are certain committees underneath that, what types of committees that you have at the board?
So the structure at a local level is the executive committee. So that's where you have, kind of like I mentioned, the rungs on the ladder: corporate secretary, treasurer, president-elect. And then from there, beyond that, the bigger span, as we kind of take the small and then we go outwards in the circle, is you have the board of directors. So we have a good dozen or so board of directors along with the executive committee. But then beyond that, the most important tier is the committees. And we have about a dozen committees. There's a community action committee that goes out, and right here in Woonsocket, the last 2 years, we raised money for the Community Care Alliance, and we were able to give them nearly $10,000. Actually, I think it was a little over $10,000 in the 2-year total.
That's great.
From fundraising and events. So community action gets out there. We also in Woonsocket on the east side just did a Habitat for Humanity right off of 99 over there in the neighborhood. So the community action does that. There's a program committee that puts on the Diamond Sales Awards, which is an award program for all the successful realtors. It's at Twin River. That's great. We also have, there's many others. There's a governance. There's an RPAC one, which deals with RPAC. Has to do with the Realtor Political Action Committee, and it's it's not Democrat, it's not Republican. They're for home ownership, and therefore homeowners' rights.
They're the watchdogs.
Yes.
When a piece of proposed legislation comes out,
correct.
They want to make sure
surveillance tax, whether it be flood at the national level, the flood zones and with FEMA, things that will affect homeowners for now and in the future. So they're there. So we have about a dozen that education. They do a lot of great things, and that's where our members come together to give a little of their time, and collectively through that, we're able to make not only the Northern Rhode Island Board, the state of Rhode Island, but in general, at a national level, all together come together to make this one great thing.
Yeah, and of course it's the base of the pyramid that holds up the structure.
Correct.
That's a good point. So the organization, a lot of folks aren't aware that the involvement that the organization takes with the public on a personal level. Most people think, again, it's just a sales organization because they may hear the president of the Rhode Island Association of Realtors come on once or twice a year on one of the TV stations and say, hey, real estate's gone up 5% this year, or it's gone down to whatever it is. But they really think that's it. So it sounds like a very valiant effort. So the initiation into the organization, to go backwards a little bit, you have to be a real estate agent, correct? Or
yes.
A pending real estate agent. Correct?
Yep. So you have to have your license and associated with a brokerage that is a realtor. So if that's the case, then you are obligated to join the Realtor Board, local board of choice that your broker has. And once you do that, we have an orientation that you sit through a couple of hours. We have our legal counsel, Monica, who is amazing, Monica staff at the state level. She comes to our local orientation and talks about a few things because these are newbies just getting into the business. And we have a few other people that come down, and it's a good orientation, and they take the pledge, the oath as a realtor. And it's all about ethics, and that's what we strive for, and it's all educating and making sure those ethics are there, again, to protect the buyers, the sellers.
And I think too, I think ethics is the foundation, and then everything else you learn as you go along. I mean, now, when I started in the business in the 80s, when you sold someone a house and they wanted to bring mom and dad or their uncle along who was in the construction business 20 years prior to that, and they're checking this thing out, I really didn't know what they were looking at. So now when they say, well, I'm going to bring my uncle along, I ask them, well, what specifically did your uncle do? Because if he was a framer, he shouldn't be looking at electrical and plumbing and heating and so on and so forth. So you do build that confidence, and it all ties into the ethics that behind the client agent relationship. So the board itself then, or the Realtors organization, is really benefiting the public directly.
It is. It's, and it's two-tiered, and that's why when I mentioned in the values, it's protecting and giving the tools to our members. If you become a realtor, it's giving you many tools, but it's also, on the flip side, it's out for the general public, and that's, at the end of the day, that's who we're serving, and that's who we are, and that's actually, ironically, I just said that accidentally. That's the slogan right now as a national level is that's who we are, and the letter R, and you'll see the commercials all over the place, because it is. Not only are we the ones helping buying and selling, we're helping our neighbors. We're helping ourselves
Sure.
and our families. So there's 1.4 million of us. We're in the same neighborhoods that we're helping our clients buy in.
Wow, 1.4. That's also quite a voting block as well.
Yeah.
As far as the political action committee is concerned. So
Right.
they have the PACs have a little bit of weight when they walk in and say, hey, well, you guys should really consider doing this, or this, because we have. Seems that the political environment, they only listen to how many voters you represent,
Right.
and they really don't care about anything else.
So true.
So, that's fantastic. So, if someone was walking in today and said to you, hey, Chris, my daughter's looking for a house, and you obviously you're a neutral arbiter, and they say to you, well, I have a choice of going with XYZ Real Estate, who's really not a Realtor member,
Yep.
or EFG Real Estate, and they are a Realtor member. How would you sell that person on the benefits of using the Realtor backed company?
That could be an 8-hour conversation, but I'll keep it to 30 seconds.
Right.
I would say it comes down to the ethical pledge. And without getting into too many details, you could easily Google or look it up. But, the code of ethics, we have to abide by that. If you're a real estate agent only and not a realtor, then the real estate agent only abides by the laws, and the laws only protect so much. Yeah. So you definitely want to go with somebody that has the code of ethics training, or at least every 2 years, and it's going to change soon. But they have that training. And not only that too, most of the time the realtors, are out there and really educating themselves, through the various things that the Realtor Board supplies, and that's what's great is with our education committee, we put on some great events that are most of the time free. Sure. So you can go. One of the greatest attended in 2019 was up in the Attleboro area, because we're right here in the Mass line, right? We teamed up with a Realtor Board from the Attleboro area, and we did Crossing the Borders, and we had a couple of attorneys, and boom, it sold out like that, because the realtors want to better themselves, and they're attending a lot of these free things through the Realtor Board, whereas you're a real estate agent, I'm not sure where you get that training from. So that's kind of long and short. I could go on forever, but it's really it's the protection that you need as a realtor, and seeing that blue R.
I see the knowledge, and there's a whole set of standards that may that the other individual or the company may not be adhering to.
Right.
It's just kind of that one-shot deal. My father used to call them one-shot Charlies that just come in, they do, and then you never see them again.
Right.
Oh, that's great information. Well, before we take our break, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a real estate tip. This week I was thinking about the salt issue. A lot of folks throw rock salt down. They go out and buy rock salt because it's cheap, and it's really, rock salt is the worst possible thing you can put on concrete. You want to make sure when you buy any type of ice melting product that it's a calcium chloride based product, because calcium is it's in our bones, it's in our banana that we eat for breakfast every morning, and it's really a wonderful means of melting ice, and it takes a little longer to melt ice, but it doesn't damage your sidewalks. It doesn't damage the wood. A lot of folks will put rock salt out on their pressure treated decks, and then all of a sudden that salt, which is acting like an acid, will actually cut into the wood. So that's the real estate tip of the week. So we'll be right back with Chris Whitten from the Northern Rhode Island Board of Realtors.
Real Estate Pro Talk is a live radio talk show dedicated to educating its listeners on the entire spectrum of real estate matters. Part of the American dream is owning a home or investment property, or perhaps even becoming a real estate agent yourself. Paul Vanas and his team of real estate professionals have over 250 combined years of experience in the industry. In other words, we can make it happen for you. Why go down the road less traveled when we can put you directly on the real estate superhighway? Whether buying or selling in today's complicated real estate market, or if you just need advice about jumping into the real estate business for a career change, you'll need a decisive edge based on experience. Call Paul Vanas at 401-265-6144 for a free, no-obligation consultation. That's Paul Vanas at 401-265-6144.
Okay, we are back with Chris Whitten. Chris, by the way, what's the name of the company, the brokerage company you work for?
So I work for Premier Real Estate.
Okay.
It's my own. We've got 2 offices.
Okay. So you own the keys.
I do. Can I break some news? A 3rd office that we just got, speaking of keys, this morning. Yeah.
Really?
So
Wow.
that's on the down low. But yeah, it's been great building my own office because I love to teach. I love to help others. So I'm able to do that with my own agents. It's great.
Nice. Yeah. So, but remember, heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yes. Yes.
you have to be the guy that not only does the brokerage and counsel and hold hands and wipe the chairs, but you're also the person that vacuums the rugs and cleans the bathroom.
Toilet
and
paper,
makes sure
yes.
the bathroom, tissue paper are there. I've been down that road too myself.
Yep.
That's great. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you. I appreciate
That's fantastic news. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
So, Chris, part of the Realtor membership in the state of Rhode Island, anyway, is belonging to what's called the Statewide Multiple Listing Service. How does the Statewide Multiple Listing Service work?
So how MLS works, and when I first got into the business, it was funny. My broker at the time said, "Chris, are you a member of MLS yet?" And I said, well, "What does soccer have to do with this?" It's kind of funny. So a multiple listing service is, a database where us here at Statewide MLS in Rhode Island, every realtor puts in their listing into MLS. So it's a database of all the available properties that are on the market. So if you listening right now, we're thinking of buying a home, you could go and have a large database of all the homes available at your fingertips to go out and explore to see and find the right one for you.
I see.
So every member of the Realtor Association in Rhode Island, if you're a realtor, you have to join Statewide MLS, and from there, we share the information. A great example of that, too, is there's a large database there. So let's say that you're thinking of listing your home. Well, what's my home worth? A lot of people go and, there's many of estimates, computer-generated estimates on all these websites. You can't let a drone or a robot figure out the value of your home.
Right.
That's, again, where I was talking earlier, the heartbeat of a transaction, where we come in and we see what kind of granite countertops you have, what the flow is. You have a finished basement. Oh, it's a walkout basement. Right. But we gather all that information and we go to MLS and we're able to look at comps, anything that's sold similar to your home, anything that's active on the market, anything that's pending. Right. And not only do we use that database to help somebody buy a home, we also help determine the value before you sell your home. So that there's a really big asset of having all that data and information all in one place. Yeah. For various reasons.
So when if you get a listing tomorrow,
yep,
you submit it to the multiple listing service.
Yep.
Then it goes into this service. It goes on into your Realtor MLS database that only realtors access in the beginning.
Right.
And you basically put all the specifics, all the property data in, so on and so forth. And then other real estate agents will then see it.
Yep.
Assuming they have buyers who are interested, and then they would call you for an appointment?
Right. So they would most likely have a buyer agent. That buyer agent calls me and says, "Hey, I'd love to get in there and see the home. It looks beautiful." They may ask a couple of questions from all the data they saw, and then we set up a time where the buyer can go in there and view the property.
I see.
So that's with a member of Statewide MLS. Now, where the market has changed within the recent past with technology, which again I love, is that there is roughly about 600 MLSs around the country. We're lucky because Rhode Island is its own ecosystem. We have one MLS.
I see.
But in other sections, in New York or there's New Jersey, other sections, they have dozens of little MLSs.
I think Massachusetts used to have a couple way back when I started.
They do. And now they basically have 3. There's one for the Cape because we love them, but they're their own animal.
Right.
We have MLS PIN, which covers everywhere from Boston pretty much out to almost Springfield, and then Springfield West has their own.
Okay.
So what happens is that if you're a member of Statewide MLS here in Rhode Island, you put your data in there, you put your listing, and we can share that. But what also happens is that now you have all these third-party websites, Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, Redfin. They all take some of that data if the realtor allows to share that, and most of them do, and then it goes and is shared with them. So now there's more eyes that are seeing the property.
So it's the public now.
It's the general public,
okay.
exactly.
I see.
So it's not I'm a realtor and I have exclusive information that you need me for, the general public
Which
can
is
now
the way
see.
it used to be. It
Correct.
used to be back when we had the MLS books, when they used to print a
Right.
book every couple of weeks.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm going prior to your entrance.
Just a bit before, but I've seen some of those books, and I'm mesmerized.
They used to print a book every couple of weeks, and it used to look like the New York Yellow Pages, and it probably cost a fortune when you think about, ecology in this day and age.
Right.
But anyway, it was a book that was it was basically our property. Right. And we'd thumb through the book, and then if we found a property that we felt that would satisfy our clients' needs, then we'd call that agent to make an appointment to show the house. So now what you're saying, it's widespread within how many, is it a couple
minutes.
of days? Oh, minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like a stock ticker in New York, basically.
It really is.
When Coca-Cola goes up 2 cents, everybody knows about it in nanoseconds.
100% right. It's
Right.
the technology has come so long. When some of these big third-party websites started to be prevalent a few years ago, that was the thing, is they weren't always as accurate because it would take them a day or two, and then it trimmed down to 6 hours.
Right.
Now they get the data so quickly that it's almost immediate. Wow. And again, for the consumer, that's great to see, because if you're as a seller want the most eyes on your property, then that's the way it's going to happen.
Sure.
Is a
sense.
realtor puts it in MLS, and from there, all that data gets pushed out, if allowed by the seller,
Right.
to all these other websites. So now everybody's seeing that. When I go live with a listing, if I go and 30 seconds later do a Google search, you'll start to see all whoop, whoop,
Right.
them all pop up. And again, that's what we want for our sellers, the most eyes, and that's what, is if that's what the seller wants, the most eyes on their property.
Sure. And the analogy I've always used, it's like the difference between putting something for sale. I don't know, you get a stereo, you want to sell it, and you put it in some local, newsletter, or you could put it on eBay.
Right.
How many more people are going to see this thing on eBay? And the propensity to have someone pay you what you want is far greater if you have more eyes, as you say, looking at it. So our listeners can understand. So you get a listing, you put it in MLS, another agent or another buyer may see it, and that buyer doesn't necessarily, or that agent, let me back up, that agent doesn't necessarily have to represent your seller. That agent can be representing their buyer.
The buyer,
right?
correct.
So,
Yep.
so technically, you're opening this thing up to like the whole realtor world in our state, right?
Right. And that's where, from the very beginning, we talked about cooperation,
Mm-hmm.
is that's why we need to cooperate.
Right.
We're both licensed realtors, so I may have a listing and you may have a buyer for that, and
Right.
I may get a call 2 days from now and say, Chris, can I get in? And then we're working together. Your fiduciary duty, if you so choose, with your client so chooses, is with you, and then mine's with the seller.
Right.
And that's how it works.
As compared to the agent who's not part of the realtor organization, all they really have going for them is a sign and an ad, right? If they assuming they put an ad in the Providence Journal or something.
Or some of the third-party websites. There's some options.
It's going to take some time, and it's just not going to have the exposure. And of course, we all know from basic economics, basic marketing, the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, presentation, and positioning. If that company is positioning that particular property at a far greater disadvantage than one having it available to the whole real estate realtor community, right?
Right. And again, it comes down, if the seller so chooses, they want the most eyes on their property.
Sure.
Because if you have the most eyes, that's going to put it out, and fair market value is going to, and supply and demand. And that's why we're in a hot market right now, is supply is down. The demand is high.
So the Realtors organization, who folks should understand that when you list or sell with a Realtor member, you're getting MLS.
Right, in Rhode Island, because
Island.
the MLS is realtor owned, so correct.
Correct.
Yep.
So whereas that other agency, you might not be getting that, and I'm sure and I'm not downplaying someone who's not an MLS member or a Realtor member, but I'm sure they're not telling their clients the disadvantages of using them. They're only telling them the advantages. So that's important, especially when it comes to price, because usually with sellers, it's all about price, right?
Yep.
They want the highest possible price with the least amount of inconvenience in the shortest amount of time.
Yeah, and that's the biggest suggestion I make to to the general public is just do your due diligence. At the end of the day, We want everything to be competitive, and just do your due diligence, and don't just hire somebody because they're, oh, Uncle Jimmy knows him. I always say, there's actually a commercial right now. I forget what it's for on TV, but having a license is like being a doctor. Right. But if you've got a heart situation, do you really want to have a podiatrist in the operating room? Absolutely. So you need to do your due diligence. Right. And obviously your health is different than a home, but a home is probably one of the biggest purchases or sales you're ever going to do. So make sure you have somebody that you trust, you've done your due diligence, and you're comfortable with that person, and not just on a whim.
Sure. It's funny you mentioned that, because years ago when I used to chase for sale by owners, that's how I started. I started chasing for sale by owners. And for those, the public listening, for sale by owners, when you're trying to sell the house yourself, I would actually go up and bang on their door and say, "Hi, my name is Paul, and I'm with XYZ Realty, and here's some information on me in case you can't sell it yourself, and I'll be more than happy to meet with you after the fact and represent your interest," and blah blah blah.
Right.
So I remember one day I was out in Cranston somewhere, Western Cranston, and someone said just that. Well, if I do list the house, I'm going to give it to my cousin. So. I've always been able to think a little quick on my feet. So I said, well, are you going to give them the listing because they're your cousin, or are you going to give them the listing because they'll do the job?
Right.
And there was like a 7-second pause. And the lady actually said to me, "Paul, I think you should come back tonight and speak with my husband," because she knew. And of course, I ended up listing the house, and I'm sure she had some explaining to do with her cousin.
Right.
But the bottom line is she made the choice. That's great. So, so the info goes into MLS. Now, the Realtors Association in Rhode Island now has a public website, which we didn't have years ago. RILiving.com. Is that correct?
Yeah. So that's Statewide MLS and the Rhode Island Realtors. They own RI Living. And all the data that's in MLS, if again the seller so chooses, it goes right into RI Living.
Wow! So it puts MLS in the hands of regular buyers and sellers now, without having to even call anyone to just when that information was user specific years ago. Now they could just bring up RILiving.com, and what's it, a search engine on there? You just fill it out like you would any other queried website.
Yep, it's they just recently updated the operating system with it, so it's very user friendly. So if you're looking for a home in Rhode Island, we say to get in touch with a realtor right away, but also you can search there, and all the data is direct from Statewide MLS.
I see. Yeah. So you put in, for example, if I'm looking in Smithfield for a 2-bedroom condo, you can actually break it down that fine and then a certain price range?
Exactly. It's very similar to the search to a lot of there are other websites that are out there now, the bigger national ones, but that's our very own in Rhode Island, RILiving.com. Wow.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that was really a leap. That was a big leap.
Yeah.
Because we, the clients would be, dependent on us for the addresses of the property now. Right. Now I get calls, and I'm sure you do too. People find them on their own and say, "Hey, Paul, I just saw the house on so-and-so street." I always use 123 Smith Street as an example.
Right.
Because that was my first listing.
Oh, nice.
That wasn't just a made-up number. I won't say what town, but, anyway. Paul, I just saw 123 Smith Street. Set up an appointment. I'd like to go see it. So now we're almost like financial brokers, because I call my financial guy and say, "Hey, I'd like to buy Tesla stock,"
right?
And then he walks me through the process. So we walk them, the buyers and sellers, through the process.
Yeah, I always say too is, I'm even though I'm a techie and I love all of that, I'm an old soul, and I love I have part of me as an old-fashioned guy, and I try to think of back then, and I hear a lot of stories of how it was back before it was like this, what you just mentioned. And I think the job's easier now, because, it must have been tough years ago where a client said, "Hey, I want a plate of food, maybe pork, maybe chicken, maybe some sort of starch, and I'd like a little spice. All right, here, find it for me."
Yeah.
Now they basically go and they say, "This is what I want. Cook it this way,"
exactly.
And then you help facilitate that.
Absolutely.
So I feel as though that it's again, it's pro-consumer. The buyers out there have as much information as they possibly could need to make the best decision for the best house for them. But there's still a lot they don't know, and that's where we jump in to show them that in person and then take them from there instead
Makes
of
sense.
trying to guess. I think you'll like this one.
Right. And that's where that knowledge base comes in that
Right.
you were talking about from the beginning.
Right.
All of that knowledge through the classes and through the seminars that you attend that the other
Yeah.
agencies might not have be privy to. That certainly helps that process all along. And of course, the more you grow, and like anything else in life, you grow, you gain more knowledge and more knowledge.
Right.
But every day, I learned something new this morning that I didn't know.
Yep.
And I've been doing this a long time, so it's quite remarkable. So the technology that the realtors use, give me an example of how it benefits a regular buyer or seller. Is like the realtor, RILiving.com, an example of how?
Yeah, that one's good. It's a public facing, so a buyer or a seller can even look on there and see what their home, where it's compared to others if you just put it on the market. So with RILiving.com, that's a good tool. Mm-hmm. But technology has changed so much for the industry where now, when I first started way back about 12 years ago, right, is that we had to drive everywhere to get wet signatures on purchase and sales agreements, on addendum, extensions, whatever it may be. Now everything's electronically signed. So even that has taken leaps where technology now and we've had to grow with that. So now it's very easy for us to just upload a document, plop a couple spots as the realtor and say, this is where you need to sign. I send you an email and you don't even look at it and just hit buttons and you sign that.
Right.
So now that's where the due diligence comes in. And as a realtor, we make sure that our clients know what they're signing. We prepare them. Hey, this is what I'm sending to you to sign. So again, technology is great because now I don't have to waste gas. I'm a green guy, so the less gas I can waste and the less paper, the better.
Right.
So I'm getting the job done quicker, but you got to make sure that you're not losing something. And for me, I make sure my clients know what they're signing when I send it to them. So then they can sign it with ease once they've read it over and ask any questions of their attorney or myself.
Sure.
So it's those there's technology out there that we use every day as realtors that is constantly changing. I don't think for the near future there's going to be electronic closings.
Okay.
All the lenders, everybody says, get your butt in that chair, which is good.
Right.
For the closure, you want to sign everything
Exactly.
In person.
So basically, you send someone a contract electronically, and I'm sure they have this thing up on their computer screen, or in my son's case, on a cell phone.
Yep.
And if they have any questions, they call you and say, "Hey, Chris, on page 2, paragraph 5."
Right. The refrigerator's not there. I thought we wanted to. Oh, yeah, we can definitely include the refrigerator.
Right,
the
okay.
seller didn't say they were going to, but
Okay.
so that's where the questions come in. And we want to preface and say beforehand, please look at this. We go over, sometimes I go over the purchase and sales agreement on the phone with them in detail as best as I can. If they have any legal questions, I say, let's bring on our attorney. Don't sign anything until you're ready.
Sure.
Again, these are things that, are part of the ethics training that we have as realtors.
Absolutely.
To make sure we're not impersonating an attorney, we're not impersonating a home inspector.
Yep.
But that's, again, where we guide and help them. I always say it's almost like I have 5 children, so all my analogies come with kids. So I'm a very busy guy.
If you want to give a shout out to your family, feel free.
Oh yeah, Dom, Nate, Butter, I call them, Isaiah and Kaylee, and then my wife Lindsay, who's at home taking care of all of them right now. So what I say though is that when I get into a real estate transaction with my client, buying a house or selling a house or whatever, a condo, I picture there's the umbilical cord and we're attached, and I'm buying this with you. I'm selling this with you. I'm embarking my knowledge as if I'm doing it with you, and they have that comfort. And at the closing table, I'm like, all right, snip the umbilical cord.
There you go.
I'm always there to answer questions or whatever it may be. But that's kind of how I view the process, and most realtors do as well, is we're there alongside. So we're there to answer any questions.
Yep.
But technology has come a long way now with there's so much that you can take a vacant home, and there's companies like Box Brownie that you upload your photo to, and they can add sunrises and sunsets, and they know exactly what angle you took it at for the most part, and they can put the sun at the right angle where it should be, even though if it's a cloudy day, they can put, in a vacant home, they can stage it. And we have to disclose that a right way so we're not misleading the public.
Right.
But technology has taken off so much that that's where the realtors come in too, is to make sure that we're still ethical in what we're doing and not misleading the public while taking advantages of all the technology that's out there
Makes sense.
to help everybody.
Wow. So are you raising 5 little realtors?
Ironically, no. I keep asking them once in a while. I've got soon to have 3 offices and things going great. I say, who wants it?
Can always use free labor. I mean, it's nothing like a kid with a vacuum cleaner. It's
right, exactly. So we'll see what they do.
So the technology, then, Chris, where do you see it going? Do you see it going anywhere different from today, or it's like tomorrow? We just don't know.
We just don't know. We know, obviously, that it's going to be easier and easier. There's right now a lot of the third-party websites. That's what we kind of call them, but they're the Zillows and Realtors and even Amazon. Like, everybody wants to kind of get a piece of the pie. So they're all coming out with their own lending institutions and closing, here in Rhode Island. Majority of the time you have attorneys that are closing the transactions, but in some states it's just a title company.
Sure.
So they're kind of buying title companies, and some of these bigger companies are starting to have everything kind of in-house. So that's where they're saying the future may be headed for those sort of things. But at the end of the day, again, you need that person that you trust and know is going to take you through the process and have your back. Not just a quick buck. Right. I'm not making accusations on all the, but I'm just saying in general.
What you're saying is perfect sense, because an extra set of eyes and ears are always a benefit to anyone doing anything. Sure.
Exactly. So so it's tough to say where the future's headed with technology. It's going to be constantly changing. They're actually talking. I was recently in San Francisco for the big national convention in November. And they were talking about AI, artificial intelligence. Wow. And for years, that was always going back to Terminator 2. That was just part of the movies. Well, it's real now. And it's going to be able to, AI is going to be able to, in photos, see just from the photo itself if it has a granite countertop without anybody really tagging it or mentioning it in the remarks. So if a client of ours says, I only want a kitchen with granite countertops, AI at some point is going to be able to look through all the photos in Cumberland and say, boom, or even a particular layout. Say, I want a kitchen island. So any home that has a kitchen island, just from the photos itself, artificial intelligence is going to be able to put that together.
That's wild.
Yeah, so that's, I think, where the biggest part of the future is going to be. And even, you mentioned a couple of things that we as agents sit down. So what are you looking for as a buyer in your next home? Maybe a 2-car garage, maybe a pool in the back. Well, AI is going to be able to do that pretty quickly by checking off a few boxes, and then boom, these are your top suggestions from what you mentioned.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can talk about that for a couple of hours.
Oh, yeah. Again, tech geek. Yeah.
Let me take a quick commercial break, and we will be right back with Chris Whitten.
Real Estate Pro Talk is a live radio talk show dedicated to educating its listeners on the entire spectrum of real estate matters. Part of the American dream is owning a home or investment property, or perhaps even becoming a real estate agent yourself. Paul Vanas and his team of real estate professionals have over 250 combined years of experience in the industry. In other words, we can make it happen for you. Why go down the road less traveled when we can put you directly on the real estate superhighway? Whether buying or selling in today's complicated real estate market, or if you just need advice about jumping into the real estate business for a career change, you'll need a decisive edge based on experience. Call Paul Vanas at 401-265-6144 for a free, no-obligation consultation. That's Paul Vanas at 401-265-6144.
And we are back with Chris Whitten, president of the Northern Rhode Island Board of Realtors. And a second real estate tip. I know you guys love these real estate tips, because
first one was great.
You can't live without them, right? Gutters and ice dams, folks. Now's the time of year. It's not too late to make sure the gutters have been cleaned, because if there's leaves in those gutters, more likely than not, the gutters are going to fill with water. They're going to get heavy when they freeze with ice, and if the gutters don't fall down off the house, they're going to create ice dams, which can obviously lead to water getting into your home, and it can be very expensive, and especially now with modern homes built with insulation. Years ago, it wasn't so much of a problem because the wood inside the walls would dry out, but now if you get water in those outside walls, there's insulation up there, and of course mold and mildew and all that other stuff can begin to grow. So again, it's not too late to clean the gutters. I just cleaned my last Saturday before the storm was coming. That's because we're in self-employed, Chris,
right?
And I don't have time to do do anything, so I have to wait for the storm to be an hour away before I clean my gutters. So
Did you look like Clark W. Griswold up there?
Right, exactly. And my wife, of course, was making comments at me out the window. You waited too long. You waited too long. And of course, she was right.
Yeah.
But in any event, let's talk about your personal brokerage, Chris. You got 11 years in.
Yep.
You survived the first 3-year baptism in fire.
That was fun.
Okay, so now, right. You've actually learned how to put food on the table the right way. How's your brokerage doing? How you doing?
It's great, and it's one thing that I've taken from the Realtor Association that I try to bring, from NAR and what their beliefs are, and we've brought into my own brokerage is being part and giving back to the community. So that's what my brokerage, Premier Real Estate, is all about. Is we're moms, we're dads, we're coaches, we're uncles and aunts, and we're neighbors. We're in this together, and so we're helping each other out. So what we do is it's going very well, and we started this program. It's called the Premier Gives Back program. We started this past April, and $150 from each closing we donate on behalf of our client's name to our client's charity of choice from our list of local beneficiaries. Wow. And to this date, since April, we've been able to donate just about $10,000.
Wow, that's huge.
And that's the thing that the Realtor Association believes in, and that's why I'm so passionate about the Realtor Association, is because it's where my heart is giving back to the communities. If we can invest back into our communities, like we mentioned, Northern Rhode Island Board, we gave just about $10,000 over the last 2 years to Community Care Alliance here in Woonsocket. We're giving back to the communities to make them a better place, because they're the neighborhoods that we live in too, and we all benefit.
That's right. And if life becomes a little easier for those folks, everything else, the shopkeeper that's across the street from the house makes more sales, and he's happy, and then he turns around and buys something from the other shop next door, and they're happy, and it's just a flood of
it's a win-win-win.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic.
Yep.
So while I have you quick, because I like to ask real estate brokers about the common mistakes they see buyers and sellers make. Do you see any, have you experienced lately any common mistakes that you've kind of jumped in there and pulled someone out of the fire?
One of the big things is I especially specialize on the listing side. So if you're going to sell your home, a lot of sellers, because HGTV is so popular, they believe that their home has to be, you have to eat off the floor and everything has to be brand new and glistening, and that's not true.
Right.
Can't tell you how many times I go into a seller's home and I have to pull teeth, not so I can get a sale. I'm like, please just let me in there, because they keep saying, I'm going to list soon. I have so much to do.
Right.
Please let me come in. I'll tell you what you really have to do. And their list is probably cut by 2/3 when I leave there, because they think this has to be done, this has to be done, this has to be done. We as realtors, we know what the current market is calling for and what buyers do and don't care about.
Sure.
So you don't have to, redo your whole bathroom. Just put in a new vanity that you get from Lowe's on discount.
Exactly.
That's, instead of spending $8,000 for a new bathroom, put in a new vanity for $400. Done.
Right.
So that's one of the things that I would say is reach out to a realtor if you're thinking of selling, and have them out, say, what do I really need to do in order to sell? Because what's in your head, I promise you, is much different than what reality is, and it's going to save you a lot of money.
Makes perfect sense. I've been an advocate for this for years, especially to your point, when these TV shows came out.
Oh yeah.
And people putting Botticino marble floors in a first-time home by a kitchen is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, over the top. And you're never going to see it. And that's the other thing too. Is the other thing I would suggest to homeowners out there that you're probably listening and not even thinking of selling in the near future. Reach out to a realtor you trust to ask them a question, because a lot of times they say, hey, I don't think I'm selling anytime soon, but I'm thinking of putting central air in my home. I ask them, I'm like, well, if you put it in, there's a whole thing that, are you going to get that money back if you were to sell in a year? You can't look at it like that. I say, if you're going to be staying here for at least another 5 years, put it in for your own enjoyment.
Right.
And, don't think of your home as just your investment and your money. You're also living there, and you're only on this earth for so long.
Exactly.
Enjoy it. So don't say, I'm going to hold off 20 years and putting, so I wish, I put central air in, because your summers would have been much more enjoyable for 20 years. And that short money you would have spent doesn't matter in 20 years.
Right.
So that would be the other word of advice I would say is, and that's why we wear so many hats as realtors. Reach out to a great reputable realtor you trust.
Yeah.
We're not there to swindle and twist your arm and say it's time to sell.
Yeah.
We're trying to get rid of that myth. We're not just these greasy salesmen or saleswoman that wants a sale. Have us out. We're your friend and we're your consultant for the long haul. Yeah. I'd be happy to, we're happy to spend time for an hour giving somebody advice. And I don't care if they don't sell with us for 8 years.
Sure, absolutely.
It's just we like to do good and to get the word out there, and that's what we are.
So, are you optimistic about the market that we're in right now?
So I know we're up against the clock, but every time I go to a national event, we have Dr. Lawrence Yun. He is the chief economist for NAR. Mm-hmm. He is so good at taking the geeky math facts and relaying it in layman's terms. And every time we see him, the last time I saw him was early November in San Fran. And, everything's still looking great. There is zero signs of a recession. The market is still climbing. So, again, reach out to your realtor professional before you believe Joe Schmo down the road that pumps your gas, because he says that the housing bubble is coming.
Exactly.
There isn't a housing bubble. There's not going to be anything, barring something crazy happening, that happened back in 06, 07, 08. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a market correction at some point, because this is one of the longest stints we've gone with rising home values. Mm-hmm. But it's coming, but it's not going to be anything crazy. Right. And what they're saying is if you buy a home today, there's a good chance you're going to have 2-3% of equity in your home come next time this year, the same time next year.
Right.
So, don't believe all the other people out there.
Well, the naysayers.
Trust the naysayers.
The
trust
coming,
the facts.
This is going to happen, and that's going to happen. Doom and gloom.
The Fed tries to stay, right in the middle.
Right.
So that's why they made their couple of recent cuts. And you're probably going to see, for the most part, the mortgage rates staying the same for next year, because it's an election year, and they don't want anybody saying that, well, you made a cut or raised it, and that's going to favor one party or the other. So these, again, are the information that realtors have, because we have our finger on the pulse.
Makes perfect sense.
And can get aside all those myths and what Aunt Sandy's saying.
Well, with 45 seconds left, Chris, I want to thank you, because I might not have the chance when the clock runs out, but I want to thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
The information has been extremely informative. Do you want to give the public your contact information? And maybe,
sure.
Maybe you might get a listing or a buyer out of it. Who knows?
That would be great. I appreciate it. But even if I can just help, the easiest way is just to go on Facebook, and it's Chris Whitten, Whitten. You'll find me with my wife and my million kids.
Great. No phone. Just want to give you
phone number 401-527-1004.
Fantastic. Well, I thank you all. And so everyone, have a Merry Christmas, and we will see you next week on Real Estate Pro Talk.